Welcome, everybody, to the final episode, the 9th episode of Disappointment Inspired. And joining me is Dave Bratton, who's had a big role, people. You don't even know this. Big role in this series. He has been intimately involved in producing those intro videos that you've all enjoyed that started off every episode. And of course, we don't have an intro video for him. But we do have some video of him that I'll show later on that will probably embarrass him thoroughly. But Dave Bratton,
you say of me?
Yes,
Dave Bratton. Tell me about this now. I'm out.
He's going to quickly end the call. But Dave, just to remind you of this series, one of the things we will do at some point is to ask you how disappointment in your life has inspired you. Now, I will say a bunch of guests have been offended a little bit in a funny way. They're like, Matt, why is it that you brought me in to talk about disappointment? What is it about my life that made you think this guy's had so many disappointments? We got to have him on the show. And a lot of them have said that. I'm like, geez, I never even thought about that. I just assume we all have had them, but people think, oh man, you're bringing me in because I've had so many of them. So don't take it personally, Dave.
I won't.
But think about one disappointment at some point that has fueled you, because this episode is all about video editing. And man, what a difference from the time we started working together 20 some years ago to now. The accessibility, convenience, the speed, how short the videos have gotten. And they're still trying to do the same basic thing, right? Which is convey emotion in those short videos. And man, I can't think of a better way to express yourself these days than to put something out there, some sort of statement you're trying to make, some feeling you're trying to get out there, and it's so quick and easy and sometimes satisfying to put it out there to the world. And Dave, you're an expert at this. I mean, from the first time we started working together, you're very skilled at capturing emotion and putting it into video. So thanks.
And we've been doing this for over 20 years now together, which is great. I mean, where do you want me to go? Do you want me to kind of start with kind of how I got involved in this, or?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've done on the episodes too is to let the expert give us a bit of an overview. Let's say someone's a complete novice to making videos. You have high school students at Mercer County Tech. They have maybe a device in their hand that's got a high-powered video recorder, but they really don't know like what to do with it, how to turn it into something beyond just hit record, right? I mean, maybe an insight or two that you could share with the beginner.
Sure, absolutely. No, it's amazing. These things have really changed the game. This phone is a better camera for filming video than my original $800 digital 8 video camera, that you had to have if you wanted to do anything. You can get much better quality. First tip, always film this way. This says cinema, this says movie, this says person with a phone. So always film horizontally, always. I mean, look, I know there are certain, maybe it's TikTok or something like that, or Instagram, where you do want to put up a short video like this, okay. But if you're trying to do something more cinematic, always film horizontally. I mean, I've, like a lot of people, I love television, love the movies. I kind of got started when I was working in an after school program. And, sometimes it could get, you want to do something interesting with the kids, something they find fun and exciting, get them, excited about doing something. They have to come here after school. It can be kind of boring for them if they're doing the same things over and over. So I worked in this after school program, and they had a video camera, and I said, hey, let's make a movie. I had the video camera. I didn't know anything about how to do it. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks for joining us. We have Dave Bratton here talking about making videos. And Brittany has been the star of Disappointment Inspired. She's been here every episode. So thanks for being with us. Go ahead, Dave.
That's awesome. So that may happen again. So I didn't know anything about making a movie. So I just tried to make it. Excuse me 1 second. Hey Lisa, I'm on a Zoom call right now. I can't. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.
So one of the tips of video
This is
making
live TV.
is
Folks.
to mute your
Live
phone
TV,
right
folks. Anything can happen.
So true.
There we go. Yeah,
It's all right.
just, hopefully that did it. So what I did is I just watched movies and I tried to film. Well, I said, okay, what do you want to do? And this was like 1997 or 98. And the big movie that summer was Independence Day. So all these kids are like, let's make it a sequel to Independence Day. And I'm like, okay, that movie cost about $80 million to make. And we've got a video camera. That's it. Let's do something else. So the other big movie that summer was Scream. And they're like, let's do Scream. And I'm like, I'm uncomfortable making a slasher film with 9-year-olds. So what we did is we made this movie. It was like a Scooby-Doo version of Scream, and so I learned by doing. I filmed everything, made a billion mistakes. My recommendation is if you ever want to learn how to video edit, your first project should not be a 28-minute film. Do something shorter, do something smaller. But that really kind of got my interest in it. And the reason I could do anything with it is my girlfriend, now wife, Danny, had a Mac. And at that time, that was the only way you could edit videos. Now you can, iMovie on your phone. But back then, it was a novel thing. So I just learned by doing, and I really enjoyed it and started doing more things just because I had so much fun with it.
I'll tell you what,
Dave, it was the kind of thing where,
this might be a good segue into some of Dave's work during this series.
Okay.
And a recap of the episodes. Then we can even talk about some of these stylistic things you do as we look at the different videos. This is the cool logo that Dave's wife, Danny, helped me edit down and fix up for this series. But we know we had 8 episodes before this one. The first one was on public speaking way back when. I believe that was in late March. And here was the intro video for it. Welcome to this episode of Disappointment Inspired. Each one of these episodes will focus on a different coping skill, how to deal with stress in your life. Today, coming to you from Wyoming, near Yellowstone. Gonna do some snowshoeing. That's a pretty unique way to reduce stress and get out into nature. On this episode, we have M&P Presentations talking about public speaking and taking your passions and bringing them into a presentation. So hopefully you'll enjoy this episode and you'll enjoy following my travels through all 9 of these. So let's talk about that for a second. First of all, I made the rookie mistake, Brittany, of having my son hold the camera like this. And Dave's like, what? We can't use it. I'm like, Dave, I took 1 trip to Jackson Hole. I have to use it. So I noticed you put those, like, what would you call those things on the side, the bars there?
It's funny. All you do is you blow up the video. You have 2 layers. The top layer is the actual video you shot. Put in a layer underneath it, expand it, blur it, and it kind of hides the fact a little bit. It's sort of a standard practice. Mm-hmm. So,
well, it looked great. And I gotta say, I sounded completely out of breath, and I was, because we were at high elevation in Jackson. I had a ton of gear on. It was 20 degrees out. We're snowshoeing, which is exhausting, by the way. And we were told, look, you might see a grizzly bear because it's like winter time and the grizzlies are just waking up. It's actually like early spring for us and like the tail end of winter.
So you're tired and fearing for your life.
Oh yeah, they go. We all had bear spray on our hip, and it was like, just be warned. Like we looked like food trekking out over the snow. So it was a pretty interesting filming for me on that one, but beautiful setting for it, certainly.
Yeah.
All right, let's check out some of the others that Dave has done for us. Here we go. Episode 2 with stand-up comedy. This, I think, was your favorite one, Dave.
Oh, okay.
This was also in Jackson, Wyoming, but at a ski. Whoa, on this week's Disappointment Inspired, comedian Joe Matarese with national TV credits. Comedy almost exciting as tubing down a huge mountain. Woo! That one was my favorite. Your favorite too. Tell us what you did there.
Oh, all I did is I went and found a video of like a snowplow or a truck like throwing snow like at the camera, and I just took that clip as the snow is hitting the camera, because if you put it in right there, it indicates that Matt crashed. I just thought it was funny to make Matt crash as he was sledding. So that's all I did. A real quick, simple edit. I thought it was super creative what you did. I love that you filmed yourself sledding down. There are television shows that sort of do that point of view camera work, like Better Call Saul, those types of shows. Just really creative stuff. Well, and I thought it was really cool, so I wanted to add something. Before
you think that it was all me, Dave, I actually stole that idea from my son's school. His head of school took the school on a little ski trip, and I noticed that he did a video while tubing, and I have seen it since in other tubing situations. People video it, so I can't take full credit. It came to my mind though, that'd be a fun way to introduce a stand-up comedy segment, right? I mean, we're introducing a stand-up comic. You want it to be funny, and you added the funnier element to it. If it was just me going down the mountain, I don't think it would have been as good. But let's check out the next. We won't show all of them, but some of them were. Okay. Music is next with Amanda Dunn. This was a good. Amanda had some cool video tips herself during that episode. Welcome to this episode of Disappointment Inspired. We have musician Amanda Duncan today. She's an expert in not just writing music and performing, but creating music videos. Music to me is creative, it's emotional, it's powerful. To me, music's a lot like nature in springtime. And behind me, you have coastal Maine in spring. Flowers are blooming, the birds are out. It just makes you feel great, just like Amanda Duncan's music. I hope you enjoy this episode of Disappointment Inspired. So what's the first thing, Brittany, you notice about that video compared to the other two?
It's a different background, like you're in a different place.
Yeah, anything about the quality of it as well, like in terms of the image?
I mean, like what Amanda did, you just flip the phone and got into her other hand? That was kind of impressive.
So the first two were of the phone. I think that's what you're saying, and that one actually was a professional camera, like a high-powered. I was videotaping a documentary, and the guy filming it was so nice. He's like, "Oh yeah, I can take some footage of you doing that," and immediately I can see the detail, which is a little scary when you're 48 with gray hair. You're like, "Oh God, not too many details," but like the lighting was good though, so he set me up okay, and that helped. But Dave ultimately edited it and make it smooth and put our logo in there. That might be the best looking one of the bunch, just because it wasn't with my phone. I mean, Dave, what's the resolution on this versus like some super professional camera?
Oh, now you're asking me technical questions.
I mean, do you know about like an iPhone 13? Like, what's the camera?
Yeah, I can't tell you the specs. No, I can't tell you the specs.
Well, that's it, Dave. You're fired. I just thought maybe you might know, being a video guy, but I know the professional ones are like probably hundreds of pixels per second or something.
Without question, it's the size of the files. The phones have gotten, to the point you can make some pretty nice looking stuff with a phone. Lenses help. So.
Do you have one of those lenses for your iPhone? I know they make like an iPhone lens that kind of fits over there, fairly inexpensive. It's supposed to do a good job, which I don't have.
But no, there's definitely a difference in quality with the camera that guy shot. That was nice.
High-end stuff, right? Well, let's look at some of the others. We did an episode on mindfulness with John Grund. I don't have his video queued up, but I do remember the thing that sticks with me, Brittany, of that episode, and I still use this almost every day, is tracing your fingers on your hand. This is what he did. He goes, okay, we're gonna do a breathing exercise. You sit down, you can close your eyes if you want, but you start at the base of your thumb, and you inhale audibly. So it's like, get to the tip of your finger and then exhale. And they do it for all 5 fingers. Just like that. And by the time you get to the 5th finger, honestly, even the middle finger for me, like it just, everything gets calmer. Just like those deep breaths, the loud inhale, loud exhale. I wish I had that video for us to do that ourselves, because something as simple as that can really calm us down. And just to connect to the theme of the entire show, a simple technique costs you nothing, costs you, maybe a minute of time just doing that. You don't even have to do this on your hand. You could literally just imagine you doing this. And I've been in those moments since where I feel stress happening, but I'm thinking about tracing my fingers. That was a John Grund episode, episode 5, special one, because not just about drawing, but we had cartoonist Doug Bratton, who is related to this guy, Dave Bratton. They're actually brothers. Here's the video. On this episode of Disappointment Inspired, Doug Bratton, he's a cartoonist and a creative guy, just like the person who built this creative elevator that goes all the way up in the sky in Philadelphia. But hopefully you enjoy this episode about using art to express your emotions. Now that was probably one of my favorites to shoot, because anybody who knows Philadelphia, and I say it correctly, Philadelphia, I lived there for years doing my PhD, so I can eat my words. That's how they say the name of the city. But that particular tower is in the Comcast building. And if you want to go there, it doesn't cost you anything to ride that ride. You get in their elevator and it looks out into the city, and you just go up 60 floors, and it's incredible. And I think at night it's amazing, and the day it's amazing. It's definitely worth checking it out if you're ever in Center City, Philly. And of course,
Philadelphia, but I don't think I've ever gone to that building.
No? Yeah, it opened, during the pandemic. There's a hotel called the Four Seasons, and it's at the top, I think it's the top 7 floors, and that they constructed that hotel to go up to their lobby. But again, you don't have to be, staying at the hotel to do it. You literally could just ride up there and check out the hotel lobby and then go down. Every room, by the way, has that view. The restaurant has the view. Like, it is just stunning. It's probably the coolest free ride that you'll ever be on. And I appreciate Dave's work with that too, because the audio wasn't great. It was in this echoey, elevator. But he made it work. And my kids kept moving around. So if you see the shots, like my daughter appears and then it's gone. It's like it's trying to do. When you're filming in an elevator too, you're constantly worried that someone's going to hop on, like in the middle of your filming. They're going to stop and the person's getting on. So it worked out pretty well. And that episode with Doug was fun too, walking us through some of his great cartooning work, like his new project, Isolation, which is now available for sale, pre-sale, right? Right, Dave?
Yep, it is. It is.
It's an amazing work that he did on that comic. I mean, it's going to be a big hit, I believe. So we had, after Doug, the episode 6, which is our yoga episode with Romy Toussaint, who led us through some chair yoga. Remember that, Brittany? That was really good. I was surprised at how relaxed you can get by doing yoga in a chair. I thought, there's no way this is going to be as good. No, it definitely was. In some ways better, because you had more leverage on the chair. I find that like yoga on the floor, I'm constantly worried about tipping over, right? Or straining something. But you got the chair here to lean upon, and it's a nice little crutch at times when you need it most. We had the acting episode, which we ran into some video glitches. Maybe this is a good opportunity to pause and say, that video work is tough. What you do, Dave, is tough. You run into problems sometimes. There can be some frustration. I imagine it's meditative when you're in a flow and you're, editing very minute details like that snow hitting the windshield, and the one when I was tubing. But then there's those moments probably where like you don't know why the audio isn't linking with the video, which is what happened to us in that episode. Like, tell us how you deal with that disappointment of, oh my gosh, I'm just keep hitting a wall here.
Yeah, that can get pretty frustrating, especially it sounds like this was happening during your live.
It did.
Then it's you're troubleshooting when you're trying to present, and that's very, very difficult. It's a little tense. I don't run into that a ton when I'm editing, luckily. but I have when I'm trying to show the videos. And that's where, that can be really frustrating because you put all this time into creating something that you're really proud of, and then you go to show it and like it's not playing, like the DVD player isn't working. Or I was telling you a story the other day about how I was going to show a video at this conference. I go in and they're like, well, we don't have a DVD player. I'm like, well, I brought the QuickTime file. And they're like, we don't have QuickTime on our computers. And so I'm like setting this up in a group of like 30 or 40 people on my little laptop trying.
You're like,
that's
okay,
where
how about sock puppets? Here's what we do.
Seriously,
We act it out.
that to me is when it gets frustrating, when you've poured your heart and soul into creating a video and then it's not playing properly, and people can't see it. That's probably the biggest frustration. Like you had, it was live in the moment and you're troubleshooting.
Now tell us about the experience of putting things online, Dave. And I've put a few videos online. It's generally been good for me, but you've had a lot more hits certainly than I have, and like that's fraught with some, I guess, potentially cringeworthy comments, or like how do you deal with that if you put something out there and you're like, oh, I love this, I think this represents me, and then all of a sudden you get some troll on there upsetting you?
No, I mean, luckily I haven't dealt with a ton of that. I've dealt with a little bit of that, but that's that you put something out there, you're proud of it, and then someone kind of trashes it or says something negative, and you're like, that can get you down. That can, and you could have, 1,000 people like it, and one person's like, oh, that's garbage. And that's sort of what you remember, that this one person was kind of rude about it or negative about it. I had one video I made, Superman 4. It's a bad movie. It came out when I was young. And I just decided for a video editing challenge, I'm like, I'm going to make a preview for this as it's like a modern preview. And I want to see if I can make this really bad movie look really good. And, I was actually very pleased with it. And I mean, one of the stars on the film like commented and really liked it. And it somehow recently went viral, and I got like 100,000 views in like a little over a week or two. And one person was like, kind of dogging on the editing, saying, oh, this is the problem with modern movies, all these quick cuts, and you capture that terrible style perfectly, and I'm cleaning up the language. And I'm like, what? You don't like this because you like movie trailers from 30 and 40 years ago? Okay. I guess you really can't please everyone.
No,
so,
that's the message, right? There's always going to be someone out there who's the
yeah.
critic. It's easy to be the critic, hard to be the man in the arena, as the famous poem goes.
Yes. No, absolutely. And here's the thing. Sometimes people who have criticisms, they're right. That guy was way off base. Someone years and years ago when I first released it pointed out, oh, you know what? The titles you have, it should all be capitalized. And I'm like, rookie mistake on my part. Good. That's constructive criticism. Mm-hmm. I don't mind constructive criticism, but like you said, trolls, and we deal with so much of that. When you put yourself out there, you're going to get people who love it, people who point out its flaws, and people who are just trolling you. And it's, that's always the risk you run when you make your personal art public.
It's so true. And another thing you make public, by the way, speaking of our next episode, is cooking. Our 8th episode was all about, preparing foods. We talked about serving them. And of course, you're literally handing someone something you're going to put in their mouth. And if they're disappointed, you're going to find out, right? You're going to see that look on their face. And that's a risk that you're taking, especially if it's a dish you think, you cook really well and you think everyone's going to love it.
Yeah.
Here's the promo for that one. Oh wait, there's the video. Well, here we are in the kitchen with our star chefs, and we're gonna start off making a risotto, which you need arborio rice, labeled perfectly here, by the way, if you notice the writing. But the key step with risotto and basically lots of dishes is cutting an onion and knife skills. So what I love about this video here, I'm gonna stop it, is is the just the visual of the kitchen, right? You got the stainless steel, we got a knife, You got Anson and Bruce. There's a lot going on in the scene for that cooking episode, in addition to what we were talking about. So how important is it, Dave, to like incorporate lots of sort of visual goodies like in a shot to keep people interested?
Well, here's the thing. One of the things I appreciate about the videos you sent to me to put together for your intros, you would do multiple takes and you would shoot B-roll. As an editor, that's what you need, because if all you get is like one shot of a video, that's all you've got to work with. Now you can move in, move out, maybe talk some stills, but you're limited in your options. You have to get creative.
What's B-roll?
Oh, sorry.
Novices out there.
B-roll is footage. For example, when Matt talked about, you know, was it Maine? Was that where you were? Where you talked about how beautiful it was outside? You had actually taken some footage of the landscape, and that was perfect because you're talking about it. Now we can show it. It's always, you know, with storytelling, you want to show, you don't want to tell. So if you can show what you're talking about, that's perfect. So the fact that you had this separate video that we call B-roll to insert, you know, just enhances the video. Yeah, no, you want, as an editor, you want choices. You want to be able, and you don't want to be locked into, this is all I have to work with. You know, I've had that before where someone's handed me very little video and they're like, here, make something great. And it's like, oh boy, this is going to get tricky.
You just reminded me too, Dave. One of the episodes we did, I was riding my bike on the canal, and there was a family of ducks, like newborn hatchlings that were making their way to the water, and I was able to capture that and use that as the B-roll. And that was a fun moment. So yeah, remember that, amateur video makers, adding in some B-roll, and then you have to go back in a program, right? A software program, and edit the video on top of the audio. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And one thing I would recommend is find music that matches the emotion that you want to convey. I mean, people have, you know, music sets the mood. And if you go over the top, maybe people will find it, you know, funny when it's not supposed to be. You know, you really control the mood with the music that you choose. So that's important. And there are a lot of places you can get like royalty-free music that you can use that you don't have to buy. YouTube has a ton of it. They have an audio library, and they've got a lot of good stuff there. So, because if you use copyrighted music, which we're going to see in one of the videos coming up, which I did 20 years ago, and it was only for a conference, so I wasn't thinking about that. That can get, you know, it can cause problems.
Well, speaking of some of your other work, Dave, let's show some of the projects Dave has done. One of them was my promo video as a speaker many years ago, about 5 years ago now. And I'll skip ahead to my favorite part, which is the message of Natural Highs has really reached so many people, and then they take it and carry it on to do something great.
A big part of our strategic plan was creating the college prevention program, New Social Engine, which was inspired by Matt Bellace.
For New Social Engine's final Natural High event, we rented an entire theater to watch the Avengers.
Over 23,000 students have attended our Natural High substance-free events, and our student members work with their colleges to reduce the harms of substance abuse on their campuses.
There have been other groups that have taken the idea and run with it in their own. There's like, turn it up. No, that was great. That was.
You rented a theater?
Yeah, explain that a little bit too, Dave. The story behind there, the prevention.
Yeah, no, for a few years, no, I did not work at a theater. We rented out a theater for college students on a Thursday night. I worked with multiple colleges in the prevention field. We created a group called New Social Engine, and it was for college students to create fun social activities that were alcohol and drug free. So we'd rent out movie theaters, we'd rent out bowling alleys, we'd rent out arcades. We did a lot of, you know, really fun stuff on like typical drinking nights. And that for students to attend, really, they just had to show up and be sober. So we tried to cut down on the drinking nights at those colleges. So one night we rented out a movie and we saw Avengers. That's why we're filming. No, I never worked at a theater. Oh, that's like maybe my dream job, because then I can see movies for free. But no, because of the work I was doing, and it was inspired by what Matt had done with Calvin and Hobbes. I don't know if you talked about that before, but when Matt was in college, we used that as an inspiration, and we took it some different places. That was an inspiration for these colleges to do some fun stuff that was substance free.
Yeah, and I really haven't gotten too much into it on these calls, but a big catalyst for my career was starting a student group in college, which still exists. And the university actually gave us a house. How privileged am I to say this? But my senior year, I moved into this house, our student group. Imagine that. You're on a college campus and the university let your group move into a house. And it really kicked us off. And we're still around coming up on 29 years, I think, in October. So it's just been a long run, and it inspired other groups like NSC, the groups that Dave started in colleges, and at Drew and CCM, right? County College of Morris.
Yep, Drew, FDU, and County College of Morris. Yep.
Yeah, and so like a big part of that effort was to give students alternative activities. I think it's wonderful, Dave, that they had you there because you knew how to come in at the right moment with the camera and document it. And I guess a question that I have too is that, like, how do you balance this life where, like, ooh, you see something cool, you want to record it, versus like living your life? That can be tough for some kids. They spend so much time on the screen. Like, how do you know when to just put it down and just be in the moment?
Yeah, the truth is, because video editing for me is very much an art, I actually don't film a lot of stuff. The only reason we had footage of that is because I wanted to use it for your video. I've taken some other video shots, but only for 20 or 30 seconds. Usually I'm just in it. And honestly, I don't think to document a lot of stuff because I am experiencing it. If I have a project in mind, that's when it's different. That's when it's intentional. So there are people who shoot everything, and that's not me. I have to be in that mindset that this is the project, this is the art I want to do. And sometimes I kick myself later because I'm like, oh, I should have filmed that. I could have done something interesting with that.
Brittany, have you ever videoed something and put it on social media? Are you that kind of person? Not at all, huh? Not for you.
Nope.
You probably have a more focused, calm life, less distracted. Because I think once you put the stuff up there, you want to know, what do people say? Did they like it? Like it's a lot. It's a lot. But let's go back to some of Dave's work beyond my video.
Never posting something on social media.
Not your thing? Well, check out some of this earlier work that Dave had done.
There are two things you put in the toilet. Number 1 and number 2. Ew. You know what you don't put in the toilet? Your cat. Power tools. Your toothbrush.
This tastes weird.
Or your old medications. How do you get rid of them? Take them here to your local police station. Visit SeaCaucusCoalition.org to learn more. Remember, flush responsibly.
I love when Dave puts on the deep voice. And was that Danny?
Yeah, that is my voice. I love doing voice acting, so when I get to do it, it's always a fun thing for me. But that one, the idea behind that was, this is a serious message. We want to tell people to stop flushing their medication because it goes into the water supply. That's not a good thing. So how do we get their attention? So for me, I wanted to make something funny. I wanted to make it humorous. I wanted to make it attention grabbing. And so we went with that. And we showed that in theaters around here in Sea Caucus. That's where I work now. It's where I am right now. And we put it up on YouTube. And we actually, with that video and some other efforts, we went from collecting about 150 pounds of prescription medication in our drop box to between 500 and 700 pounds every year. So that's exactly the goal.
I guess take us to the moment where, of all the issues in the world, and gosh, there's so many problems in the world, right? Like, take us that moment for you where you realize, like, substance abuse is a huge problem and I want to try to do something. And then you reach into your tool bag there and say, I'm gonna put my video editing skills to this problem? Like, how does that happen?
Right. Well, when I graduated college, I'd taken a course there where I worked in an after-school program, and I realized I really liked working with young people. So I did that for a few years, and then through my brother's involvement with TIGS, now the Lindsay Meyer Teen Institute, he got involved with another program called Rebel, Reaching Everyone by Exposing Lies. And he asked me to do a video for them for their conference, and I did. And you know what? This is before social media. I wanted to go to the conference and see how people reacted to the video, like what they thought. And that was sort of a flashpoint for me, because I actually got to hear a person they brought in by the name of Jeff Wigand, who was a whistleblower at the tobacco industry. And that's where I really got a lot of information that, I cared about prevention, but that sort of changed things for me when I learned that there were, the tobacco industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is trying to hook kids. Their goal is to hook kids young, hook them for life. And I liked working with young people, and I realized there's this corporation trying to get them addicted to an addictive substance that's bad for them. And I'm like, well, if I can do something about that, I'd like to. And then that sort of changed things for me. I still work with young people, but the last 20 years it's been in terms of substance abuse prevention. And one of the very first things I did when I was working with Bergen County Rebel is connect with Marvel Comics, because they had removed smoking from their comics. And we actually wanted to, recognize them, give them an award for that. And we went in, I took a group of high school students into New York City and met with, the editor-in-chief and the publisher of Marvel Comics, and we talked about it. And they actually asked us, they're like, well, we've removed smoking from our comics mostly, but what do you think about the bad guys smoking in comics? And we talked to them. We're like, some young people think, the bad guys are pretty cool and identify with them, because Marvel Comics has made really compelling villains. So we're like, maybe keep them smoke free too. And they said, that's great. That's what we need to know. We'll tell the artists. And
the
so
funny thing is,
invited them out to our conference and showed. Matt, do you have that video?
I do.
You want to?
Yeah, I was going to cue that
the
up.
video we made when we welcomed them up on stage.
So this is the Marvel Comics video that I pulled off of YouTube here. And let's see if we can get it up. There we go. Yeah, I felt some emotion there watching that. That was great. I mean, that seems like you did a lot of editing. I heard sound effects. You had graphics that you created and then used movie clips. I mean, how long did that take you?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I made that video almost 20 years ago. So I don't remember. It was probably 20 hours or I don't know. It took a long time. I had to get all those clips, which was difficult because none of that was on the internet. I'd have to hook the DVD up to my camera, and because of copyright protections, it would shut it off after. It was difficult. It was difficult, but obviously based on the movies that are in that and the music that's playing, that's from a long time ago. That's before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the cool thing, I was telling Matt about this, is we showed that at our conference when we welcomed an editor from Marvel up on stage, and we had 1,000 teenagers there, and they stood on their chairs, and that, it was just, the music was going. That was a huge song then. No one expected that, to see that at that conference, and it was really cool. And the award we gave them was called the Fight the Good Fight award, recognizing a company for, you know, taking a stand against, you know, big tobacco companies. So yeah, and I'll tell you, it's funny. You know, you asked me before, like, what's hard for you when I'm watching that on Zoom, and I don't know how it played for you, Brittany, but it was really delayed. Like it wasn't coming in real time, so like the sounds weren't matching up, and it's as the person who put that together, you're like, no, it doesn't look just right. So
Yeah, that thing I didn't know that.
you know,
I when I played it,
I'm
it sounded
experiencing what we were talking about just right there.
it was delayed. I didn't realize it sounded fine to me, and it was paired up. So that's crazy that you
Yeah.
had a different experience, and we're seemingly watching the same thing, but it's coming across differently.
Yeah.
In the
Yep.
moment.
No,
By the way,
absolutely.
were all the other videos like that, or just that one was a little delayed?
No, all of them.
Really? They were all
Yeah.
like was meaning like the audio
There's a
was
little
off?
delay. Yeah, they're a little glitchy, and I think that's a function of the internet and Zoom. Hopefully, it's you know, I don't know. That's at least on my end.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
No, Brittany, how about you? Were they delayed too?
I was delayed.
Was the video like you said the audio and the video were kind of off a little bit?
I don't
No?
think
They look
so.
good?
Yeah, it's
Good.
okay.
I'm glad. I mean, it's just me then. Perfect.
You know,
That's
I
okay.
will say that
I've seen all these a million times.
the experience over Zoom has been a lot of that, where there's technical stuff and you know there's like disappointments, different levels of disappointment I realize in this life. And I can't tell you how many times like you get set up for some presentation over Zoom and there's something that happens that's out of your control and it's maddening. I can remember one time I sent invitations for a Zoom webinar and I told the woman like, look, this is for the audience, this one. This is for a small group of panelists that I'll be talking to. Do not share this one with the audience, please.
Oh no.
Because if you do, then 1,000 of your attendees will be all in the panel in the morning. Okay. Log in, 1,000 people show up on the panel, and you're like, oh my God, these are teachers in a school district on a very tight schedule. What do I do now? Right? It was like one of those moments of like, and it's completely out of my control. I tried everything I could to prevent it. And you're just left with like that feeling of like, oh my God. And so maybe you can help us too, Dave. Like in your life, you seem to be a pretty easygoing person for the most part. Like when life hands you something, it wasn't your fault at all. It's out of your control. It was a big disappointment. Like, how do you walk through that mentally so that you don't like carry it with you? Like, how do you deal with it?
I'm trying to like pull into a certain mindset. I'll tell you what, one of my big disappointments, honestly, was I loved creating the new social engine NSE program. Loved it. And the grant for that ended. So I couldn't continue to do it. Basically, I lost my job. And at one point, I was flown out to another state. I was flown out to Oklahoma to receive an award for the work I'd done with NSE 2 months after I lost my job. You know, so that was ironic and bittersweet. And after that, you know, I was trying to find what was next. And I ended up working in advertising for a year, pharmaceutical advertising. And that, in terms of being a disappointment, I hated that job. It was like 5% awesome and 95% drudgery and awful. And it didn't really, for me, it didn't feel like it was making the world a better place. The work was tedious, wasn't very creative. Some of it was, like 5% of it was great. But, you know, and then they had budget cuts and that didn't work out. So I kind of threw myself into video editing and creative stuff. You know, and I created a separate YouTube channel that I've done over 100 videos for. It was just a creative outlet called Action Figure Comedy. And, you know, so that was one way I dealt with it. I'll tell you what, you know, one thing that really helps is having supportive people in your life when you're dealing with something like that. My wife was incredibly supportive. You know, it's hard on you when you lose a job, and it's hard on your family when you lose a job.
So it sounds like your initial move, other than leaning on family, friends, and expressing it and having them listen to you. And I always find too that when they, after I've expressed myself and then I start asking my friends, how are you doing? Like, it gets me out of my head. But the other thing it sounds like you did was you're in the disappointment for well over a year, and you're working this job, and that's disappointing for the most part. But yet you said, look, I can't control this right now, but what I can do is find another outlet to feel good, and not to just say, oh, woe is me, my life is a miserable mess, I hate this.
Right.
To actually find other ways to feel good.
Yeah, if I don't like what I'm doing there, let me find something I do like doing. I did try to focus on what I liked about the job. There wasn't much, but I did pour myself into that. And I was proud of some of the stuff that came out of it. I mean, I had an idea, for an ad campaign that went before a client, which may not sound like a big deal, but that was in my first 2 months there. I was told it'll probably take you 1 to 2 years before that happens. I had another idea before, the budget cuts that ended up being, a TV commercial. So there were I've tried to focus on the little things that I liked, but finding that other outlet, that creative outlet. And I think, we talk about the mechanisms to cope when you're disappointed. I would, you don't have to rely on just one. You can use multiple, rely on people, meditation, a creative outlet. You can sort of incorporate multiple things. So for me, being creative made a big difference in having good people. And honestly, one of the things that was helpful is, when that particular job ended, I started working with you more. And that was a big deal to me. Like, I will always be grateful that I got to do that, consult with you, help you with a lot of videos and social media and stuff like that. And that was fantastic. So
I'm waiting for you to say and that was the biggest disappointment of all, man. Just working with you for that brief period of time. That inspired. But now take us to your life. This is the big punchline of the show, as Brittany knows. We're down to our last 10 minutes here. So we need to know, Dave, in your life, what's a big disappointment that you faced, and what has it inspired as you look back? And maybe it's this one we're talking about now, or maybe it's another one you haven't mentioned. But what has it inspired, in your life that you really appreciate and you love?
It probably was, losing that advertising job. As much as I hated it, once budget cuts happen, you're like, well, I don't have a paycheck anymore. But the 5% that I liked, forget the 95% that I didn't. I'm like, okay, I really want to go into this, and really it came down to, I made over 100 videos for that channel. I probably produced over 250 videos in my lifetime. But that was a big disappointment. Just not having things work out. When I lost, when the grant ended with NSE, and then it's like, well, that job's over. And then you go to a job and you hate, and that job's over. That was difficult. That was really hard.
I think for the students who are listening, who have never experienced their own job loss and income loss, when you get older, it's kind of like to lose work. And I did there in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a stretch of 2 months where not only was there no work, it was like you're looking out on the horizon and you don't think you're ever going to see any work. It's kind of like the cartoons. I remember watching like a Bugs Bunny cartoon when Wile E. Coyote was like in the car, and all of a sudden like the car gets stripped away and it's just Wile E. Coyote, and he's like hits the pavement and just like scrapes on the ground, and like everything just gets ripped away from you. You had this whole work life and this whole like I'm in control and I'm doing, and then nothing, and then you hit the pavement like bam, and that feeling is scary. It's especially when it's not your fault, like the pandemic with me or Dave with the grant. My gosh, it's like it can be infuriating. Like, what did I do to deserve it? No, you did nothing to deserve this, but this is what you have. Congratulations. Here's the bowl that you got to eat from. What? Like it can be maddening, but it sounds like you were able to pick yourself up out of that.
Yeah, and it's not fun, and it's hard work. And something I joke about is looking for a job is the worst job you'll ever have. It's no fun and it doesn't pay anything at all. So, when you're looking for work, it is tough. But in the meantime, I'd look for a job and I'd make these videos. And like I said, this channel turned into something, nothing huge. It didn't go viral. I didn't hit it big. I had one video that got like 40,000 views, and that's awesome. But a bunch of them have like 100 or something like that. But I was doing that for me, and if you can find that thing you love to do, and for me, just in general, being creative with it, I love video. That's probably my preferred, but I can draw. Um, find that thing that you can kind of do for yourself. It's kind of cliche, but it feeds your soul. And then hit the pavement and find that job too. So.
Well, I will say that we were intending this last few minutes too. I was hoping my wife would come in. It's our anniversary today, by the way. For those watching, thank you. 19 years and never a disappointment along the way. No, I'm kidding, of course. But the thing I was going to talk to my wife about, in addition to our anniversary, and she's not going to be here because she texted me and said she's running late. Talk about disappointment, right? I can't have her on to chat about that. Was the idea of therapy. We really never discussed going to a psychologist, going to a therapist, and working through some of these disappointments. Because the big question with young people often is, well, when do I go? How do I know that there's something wrong or wrong enough that I should go? And is there a reason to be afraid of therapy? Is it, some people are very skittish about opening up to a stranger, and they don't know the good that it can provide. And as someone who trained in psychotherapy, I can share with all the viewers watching is that, hey, I think all of us could benefit from sitting down with a professional and just simply talking through some of our disappointments. Because what I noticed was, and I had a therapist in the early days of the pandemic and stayed with him for well over a year, where there are a lot of what are called cognitive distortions that human beings make, even psychologists, where we have certain reactions to things, certain assumptions we make. And I'll try to give you an example of a cognitive distortion. Assuming the worst intent in people. That's a good one, right? Like, so let's say, Dave lost his job because of the grant, but he internalized it as so-and-so at my job hates me. Like they're the reason why I lost this job, right? And they have no evidence of this. Dave had no evidence, but yet he's still pursuing that line of thinking, like that the world is persecuting him and isn't this horrible and I'm being screwed. And it's like, no, the evidence suggests that your grant just ran out, right? And so not your fault. You did great work. Everyone loved you. And it's a tough spot, right? That's an example of a cognitive distortion. And it can affect us very deeply, whereas we can walk around with the weight of the world and this anger inside of us that someone's trying to get us, when in reality, the evidence is not the case. And a therapist can help you come to that conclusion, can talk you through these distortions. Another cognitive distortion is catastrophizing. I don't know about you, Brittany. You ever do that? You go to like the worst case scenario, like, oh no, I got a C on the test. That means they're going to kick me out of school. Have you ever done that one before?
Yeah, I did had some problems like that, but also I did take some therapy throughout some of my time. Yeah, before I almost suffered from depression, but luckily I got over it and I'm fine now.
No, that's really great, Brittany. I'm glad to hear that you did that. And I bring this up partly because we talk a lot about disappointment on the show and all the great things we can do to look for inspiration and to feel better. But let's face it, there are times where we're overwhelmed by our feelings and we feel like we can't go on. Maybe you're depressed or so anxious you can't get out of bed. I've seen people like that. And there's a reason to go talk to someone about it. And it may be really disappointing to admit to yourself, look, I can't fix this on my own. That's a disappointing admission. Like, you know what? I don't rule the world. I can't solve every problem. But if I go talk to somebody, maybe it'll help. That's a really mature move. And I'm glad that you did that, Brittany, because it can truly help you get back on on track and get moving again. And I found that therapy really helped clear my mind of a lot of distortions I had. I learned very quickly that I grew up in a household where my father was constantly convinced that he was going to get fired. Like, seriously, he would win awards at his job. You'd praise him like, Dad, that's so awesome. You won that award. Yeah, it could all go away tomorrow. That's my father. Like, what? That's your response? Like, good job, Dad. They could fire me today. Like, wow. Every day of his life, he was like that. He saw the world as deprivation because he grew up as a post depression, Great Depression child. So like to him, it was like, yeah, the other shoe's going to drop. Everything's going to fall apart tomorrow. And I'm his kid, right? So I listened to that for 18 years of my life and then went to college. And so there's a little bit of me that was like, I'm living in deprivation. Well, when the world truly collapsed and I lost my job, I realized, no, I'm living in a world of abundance. Like there's all this great support out there, friends, family. In the pandemic, there's government programs, there's state programs, federal programs, so many things to help clients that helped. And things were fine. I survived. It was okay. The therapist helped me kind of see this and bring me to that conclusion. So that's sort of the final plug on the show is like, look, if you've followed with us all this way and you're looking for the secret to disappointment and nothing seems to be working, well, maybe sitting down with a counselor or therapist, can help you. And don't be scared. They're not going to do mind control or change fundamentally the person you are. It's really all about you understanding you. Because I find just talking to someone, hearing myself say something sometimes makes me aware of like, ooh, that's what I'm thinking. Interesting. Have you ever done that before, Dave? Where you're like, you realize something about yourself because you're talking about it. You're like, oh gosh, I never quite realized I thought that way.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I kind of have to go now.
Well, Brittany, you've been amazing through all this series. Again, I'm going to send you both copies of my books, sign them for you. If I could give you a hug virtually, I would. I did when we saw each other for the cooking episode. You are a star, Brittany. Thank you so much for being here and smiling and contributing. You're great.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being part of this series and like all the time coming and like just trying to support. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. You feel free to turn off your camera, Brittany, and go to class. We're going to record the last section here, and I'll get Dave's answer to the question, and then we'll wrap up. But thank you so much, Brittany.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care, Brittany.
Nice meeting you, Matt.
Take care. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
So, Dave, what did you think? Did you have an answer to my long-winded question earlier?
Remind me of the question again.
Your question was so disappointing. You ever had that moment where just the act of talking about something, you kind of realize like, ooh, so I'm really kind of anxious about this. I never realized that, but
yeah, those sort of epiphanies. We're like, oh, okay, so that's how I think, or that's how I feel, or sure, no, definitely, and those can be. Those can be surprising, and ultimately, if they're serious, hopefully, you then act on it. You do something about it.
I can tell you in my
I think
marriage,
when I was
Dave,
younger, I realized.
I'm gonna say in my marriage that happened to me when I was dating my now wife, and I remember thinking to myself like, well, I suppose I can keep dating other people, but as long as she's still in my life. And then when I said that to someone once, like I was kind of half kidding. I'm like, oh, wait, maybe that's the sign. Like you don't want this person to leave you.
Right.
Maybe you should be with that person for the rest of your life.
I better put a ring on it. Yeah. Yeah, no. I think when I was younger, I kind of realized maybe, I don't know if it was because of how I was speaking to myself in my head. I'm like, I don't think I like myself very much. And that was sort of a big realization, when I was younger. And okay, well, what can I do about that? And yeah, definitely. It's, and there, you look at things in your life now and you're like, oh, I'm still older and there's still maybe things to address. Hopefully you're always growing as a person. But absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for your participation. We talked tons about video work and then even the psychological aspects of it and then therapy, and like you were with it through the whole thing and a great guest. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. If I was going to leave anything for anyone out there who wants to make their own videos, try and tell a story, try and tell it in an emotional way that kind of hooks people. And videos are a lot, video making can be a lot like life in that you rarely do it alone. Do you know what I mean? Like if you want to see, okay, Top Gun's out, Tom Cruise, biggest star in the world. Watch the credits. See how many names are in it. Nobody does this alone. And that's something good to remember in life, that they're having people you can lean on is a big deal.
So Dave, if the audience wants to find you, any plugs like action figure comedy, or what would you suggest?
Oh, they can check out action figure comedy on YouTube. Type in Dave Bratton on YouTube. You'll get me or a gospel singer. I'm not the gospel singer. So,
don't hit up the gospel singer. He's had enough of the other Dave Bratton.
Exactly. Action figure comedy on Instagram, or Dave Bratton on Instagram. But yeah, no, if people are interested in that or have any questions, I'm always happy to talk about the stuff. I love it, and I could talk about it endlessly. We could have shown tons more videos, and I would have had a blast giving you the directors behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, so thank you for having me, Matt. I really appreciate our friendship.
Same here,
so,
David.
Thank you for
your.
You and I made together. It's been cool, like helping. You do a great job with what you do, and if my video work can help support your career, and it's always a positive, great thing. So.
Thanks, Dave. And your work on this series has been wonderful. It really kicked things off, every episode to have your video editing. So thanks so much. And thanks everyone for watching. This is the final episode, and hopefully I'll see you again down the road. Take care.
Bye, Matt.
Bye-bye.